Hello everyone, this is Tales from the Gum Tree by May Gibbs. The Dragonfly Races. One morning, Snugglepot and Cuddlepie were lazing in the sunshine when zoom, a cluster of glittering dragonflies flew overhead. How I'd love to fly, said Snugglepot dreamily. I wonder how it would feel to race through the blue, blue sky. Perhaps I might get a chance today at the Dragonfly Races. I would rather stay safely on the ground, Cuddlepie said. Besides, only expert flyers can ride dragonflies, he added. But Snugglepot pretended not to hear. The usually sleepy bush was now bustling. Crowds of bush folk had come from far and wide to enjoy the fun, and the nuts had never seen so many of them in one place. Hello, young friends, Mr. Lizard called out. He was dressed so smartly, Snugglepot and Cuddlepie hardly recognised him. What would you like to do first, he asked. I would like to ride a dragonfly, said Snugglepot. I think you'd better leave that to the racers, Mr. Lizard laughed. How about the slides? They had a wonderful time whizzing down the slides on their leaves, slurping cups of nectar and riding on the swings. They enjoyed themselves so much, Snugglepot forgot all about flying. Mr. Lizard called them over. Come and see this. High up in the branches above, the Baronia babies were putting on daring acrobatic show. The audience was spellbound as performers swung on trapezes and somersaulted through the air. I hope they don't fall, Cuddlepie whispered. The spiders have woven a net, so they'll be quite safe, reassured Mr. Lizard. Look out, Snugglepot cried. The audience gasped as Baronia Baby suddenly let go of the trapeze. Using her petals as a parachute, she floated across the clearing. All the Baronia babies were now flying through the air, laughing as the breeze filled their petals. Seems everyone can fly except for me, said Snugglepot, trying not to be sad. I would so love to fly. Never mind, Mr. Lizard comforted. Maybe when you're older, you will. To fly takes a great deal of practice. Snugglepot knew Mr. Lizard was right, but I wish I was up there, he said wistfully, watching the gliding acrobats. Just then, there was a rustle overhead. A beautiful butterfly emerged from her cocoon, ruffling her wings to dry them in the sun. Suddenly there was another flash of colour, then another. The butterflies were waking up after their long slumber. Cuddlepie clicked his fingers with a grin. I know how you can fly. Flagging down a butterfly, Cuddlepie whispered in her ear. She nodded and fluttered over to Snugglepot. My name is Sunburst. Where would you like to go? She asked Snugglepot. Snugglepot's eyes widened in amazement. Really? He asked. Up to the sky, please. He climbed up onto the butterfly's back, and with a flap of her wings, she gently took Snugglepot upwards. Oh my, cried Snugglepot. I'm flying. I'm really flying. He couldn't believe he was up in the big blue sky, and it was simply glorious. Wait for me, Cuddlepie called out to Snugglepot, and hopped onto a waiting butterfly. It moved so slowly and gracefully, he felt quite safe. It was as if he was travelling on a cloud. Waving goodbye to Mr. Lizard, the butterflies took the nuts right across the whole carnival. They marvelled at all the sights far below them. This is amazing, shouted Snugglepot, full of glee, as his butterfly looped the loop. Cuddlepie smiled, but was glad his did not do the same. When the butterflies finally landed, both nuts were absolutely giddy with joy. Did you enjoy flying, Snugglepot? Asked Mr. Lizard, who was waiting for them. Oh, yes, said Snugglepot, bouncing with excitement. Did you see me fly? I had the best time ever. And what about you, young Cuddlepie? Mr. Lizard smiled. Why, flying isn't so scary after all, Cuddlepie said. Next time, shall we find a dragonfly? Snugglepot to the rescue. Let's go, Cuddlepie, said Snugglepot, dancing with excitement. It's time for our lesson. Do you really think we'll be able to paddle our own boats? Asked Cuddlepie. As sure as nuts have caps, said Snugglepot, pulling on his friend's hand. The Wattle babies had promised to show Snugglepot and Cuddlepie how to paddle across the creek. Wattle babies are very good teachers, as they are always so cheerful and encouraging. It was a warm spring afternoon, and the nuts were glad when they reached the cool creek lined with shady peppermint gums. There they are, Snugglepot pointed at the brightly coloured Wattle babies down at the creek bank. The friendly frogs were helping them with their boats. Hello, Bright Eyes, Snugglepot and Cuddlepie called out when they saw their Gumnut friend waiting for them. Are you ready to set sail? Asked Bright Eyes after their lesson. I suppose so, said Cuddlepie with a frown. The boats look awfully small. Bright Eyes laughed. Don't worry, Cuddlepie. These canoes are made for the finest seed pods. They're perfectly watertight. Just then, some of the Waddle and Baronia children began climbing into swings, spun from the strongest spider silk. They hung from the low-flying branches of river gums. The children swung out far over the creek, letting go to plunge into the rippling water below. Splash! It was a wonderful game that had them shrieking with laughter. Just remember not to stand up in your boat, Bright Eyes called out as Snugglepot and Cuddlepie settled into their canoes. The Nuts followed Bright Eyes out across the creek. Wait for me, Cuddlepie shouted as he went around in a circle. You need to paddle with both sides, called Bright Eyes, laughing. Watch me. Once he got the hang of paddling, Cuddlepie started to enjoy bobbing across the water. Snugglepot was also enjoying gliding across the water. This is the life. There was a commotion as a paddle boat went by, churning up the water. A family of lizards was pedaling a large wheel with their long, strong legs. Look, it's Mr. Lizard, said Cuddlepie. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Lizard, he waved. But the lizards were too busy laughing to notice little Gumnut. Cuddlepie stood up to attract their attention. Mr. Liz... Whoa, shouted Cuddlepie, wobbling dangerously on the wash of the waves. He lost his balance and fell out of his canoe, head first, disappearing into the water with a gentle plop. Splish, splash, splosh. The Baronia and Waddle babies continued with their noisy game, and the paddle boat swishing around the bend. There was too much going on. The lifeguards didn't notice Cuddlepie had fallen into the creek. Luckily, someone else had noticed. Reaching the other bank, Snugglepot was now clutching one of the spiderweb swings. Hold on, Cuddlepie, Snugglepot shouted to his friend as he jumped. Swoosh! Snugglepot swooped across the water, reaching down and stretching out his hand. Got you, he cried, pulling a very wet Gumnut out of the creek. I'm soaked from my head to my toes, Cuddlepie spluttered, sailing through the air. Everyone gasped as Snugglepot gently dropped him onto dry land. I don't think boating is for me, Cuddlepie shivered as Snugglepot wrapped him in a warm leaf. The air grew chilly as the sun began to set. So Bright Eyes built a crackling campfire. You'll be dry and toasty in no time, he told his wet friend. The group joined Cuddlepie around the warm fire and roasted some delicious seeds for their supper. Cuddlepie was beginning to feel a bit better now he had some yummy honey tea inside him. Everyone was talking about Snugglepot's daring rescue of Cuddlepie. The way you came flying through the air was simply rippling, said a young frog admiringly. You got there so quickly. It was Treetop, said Brony Bunny. Bright-Eyed laughed. What an adventure you have had. I didn't expect anyone to do any fishing today. I think I landed the catch of the day, said Snugglepot, hugging his friend and smiling. Everyone roared with laughter. Cuddlepie, loudest of all. The Moonlight Pageant. It was a few days until Mrs. Kookaburra's birthday party. Snugglepot and Cuddlepie were very excited. Let's take a trip to the big city to buy her a special present, said Snugglepot. Oh, yes, cried Cuddlepie, clapping his hands. I'm sure we'll find a very special present there. So the Nuts emptied their piggy banks and put their money inside their hats. The big city was very far away, so they took cricket taxis. Snugglepot and Cuddlepie enjoyed the ride, but they were glad when the sky turned pink and they could stop for the night. I'm so tired, yawned Cuddlepie. Look, butterfly cocoons. Snugglepot pointed to a nearby branch. Let's borrow two, he said. Wrapped up in the soft silk, the Nuts were soon asleep. But in the middle of the night they were suddenly awoken by a loud howling beneath the tree. Well, what was that? Cuddlepie trembled, peeping out of his cocoon. I don't know, Snugglepot said with his hands over his ears. There they go again, making such a din, an elderly Blossom complained, looking out from her tiny house above. No one can get any sleep around here. Looking down, Snugglepot and Cuddlepie saw two koalas, bathed in moonlight, howling with happiness, and lots of tired little Nut and Blossom faces peeking out all around. What are they doing? Snugglepot asked the old lady. Singing. Mr. and Mrs. Koala always do it when the moon is out. Doesn't much sound like singing to me. The Blossom went inside, grumbling to herself. Excuse me, Mr. and Mrs. Koala, Snugglepot called out. Could you please be quieter? We're all trying to sleep. Mr. Koala laughed. Ho, ho, young Nut. Isn't the moon beautiful? We love it so. The awful noise continued. We need to make the koalas forget about singing to the moon, Cuddlepie said. Then everyone can get a good night's sleep. I have an idea. They gathered the weary neighbours and told them of their plan. Nodding and smiling, everyone went back to their beds as the moon slid behind the clouds. The next day, everyone eagerly came together. They were going to put on a magnificent show. They sewed feathers, petals and leaves, and Snugglepot and Cuddlepie spent all day helping the performers practice. They were so hard at work they forgot all about their journey to the big city. Don't worry, Cuddlepie. Now I have an idea, said Snugglepot. He scribbled a note and gave it to the cricket to deliver. When it became dark and the moon once more lit up the night sky, Mr. and Mrs. Koala climbed down from their tree. Before they could open their mouths to sing, Snugglepot spoke. Mr. and Mrs. Koala, just for you, would like to present the Moonlight Pageant, he said, bowing grandly. One by one, the performers came onto the stage. The flannel flower babies performed an elegant ballet, accompanied by the frog and cricket choir. Then the wattle babies put on a funny magic show. They can hide a lot of things in their fluffy yellow clothes, you know. By gum, I haven't laughed so much in years, said Mr. Koala as another act appeared. Mrs. and Mrs. Koala were so enchanted they didn't look up at the moon once. When the curtain finally fell, they were clapping and cheering was deafening. The night was a huge success. Well, well, here are my good friends, a familiar voice said. Mrs. Kookaburra, what are you doing here? Asked Cuddlepie. Mrs. Kookaburra held out the note. I heard about your show, so I had to fly over and see it for myself. And what a treat it was, she said. She smiled. It's a wonderful birthday present. Snugglepot and Cuddlepie grinned back. Happy birthday, Mrs. Kookaburra.